Okay, everyone. So here we go with our last class with ArtVenture, and we have Lanette here. And thank you so much, Lanette, for coming on and helping us and doing our class for us. And off you go. Thank you. Have fun.
Thank you. First, I know that this has been a little bit of an adventure, and I am sorry for any confusion. I do appreciate all your patience and your willingness to go forward this. So this canvas is here, what I created with the kit that I received. It's a little bit different than my typical style, but I actually love the way that it turned out, and I hope that you do too. The mediums that we're going to work with primarily are the matte gel, the heavy white gesso, and then we have 2 impasto paints that came with this. If you're not working with this kit and you're working with something on your own, just try to find at least 1 green paint and a paint that matches whatever you are working with. In the kit, you guys received your leaves, your sisal, and your flowers. And then everybody was asked to make a little bit of resin in the prep work or the clay, whichever one you're working with. I'm working on a 12 by 12 canvas. You could work on a 12 by 12, what's it called? Panel. So you could have just like a panel. You could have a piece of cardboard if that works better for you, or you could have a circle or a smaller canvas as well. I was talking with one of the ladies that is taking this class, and she's not really a picture person. And while you can put a quote here, it is designed around a picture because I didn't have a focal point because I couldn't use the drawing. And if you guys have questions on the drawing, I'll be happy to help answer anything that I can with that. But I told her to just make her canvas smaller, and that would alleviate the need for such a large center focal point. I hope that makes sense. And if there's any questions, just interrupt me. I'm happy to help. Next is some acetate that we're going to be working with. There were substitutions for that. If you have questions on that, just yell. Some chipboard that I asked to be painted white.
Lanette, we're going to interrupt you just for a second.
Absolutely.
The picture size that you use, what size did you use for this project?
This one is a 4 by 6, but
perfect.
It got trimmed down a smidge. Not really a word, but you know what I meant.
Nope. Yep. She just asked what approximate picture size. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Then these are the chipboards from Sharon's collection. They actually match the transfers that we're using, so they do feed in very well. And there's a lot in here, so you guys can use these on a multitude of projects. Okay. Any questions with any of that? So this is what we're working on. I'm going to move it to the side unless anybody wants a closer peek before we get started. Oh, okay. Put that over there so I can see what I'm doing. I have to be able to see it so I can remake it. Sorry. Okay. So this is just a whiteboard that I have that I repainted. It was a different project. Ever since this is a duplicate, this is what I'm going with. I didn't realize that it's kind of an off-white. So when I'm doing this, if anybody's got gesso to still do, I'm gonna just add some white gesso to this canvas real quick. Oh, and the other thing is make sure that everybody has their heat tools, because there's a lot of drying and you really need that. And anybody wants to talk to me, that's great.
Should we all gesso our canvas or only if it was not white?
You absolutely can. if your canvas isn't the color that you want. I'm more doing this just for the color because
Okay.
I had spray painted it with a quick coat just to reuse it. And I didn't realize how on white it was until I got in these lights. That was the thing I rushed doing this morning. Actually, I could just use the panel. Maybe I'll do that. I was gonna send that out, but okay, we'll just start over. Okay. So I have a 12 by 12 panel. You can use a canvas, you can use a board, you can use a cardboard. The first process is building your background. For this, I have the Dusty Rose paint and I had some gesso available to work with and Victorian green. Primarily, I'm starting with the Dusty Rose and the heavy gesso. Before you guys start this, just know you're going to make a mess. That's the way I like to create. I just enjoy it more. I feel like I've done something if I come out of my art room dirty. I don't usually create anything that I need to wear again. So if you have an apron or baby wipes or anything that helps you keep clean, the one thing I always recommend that you have in your room is an old towel, just so we don't kill so many trees. This is my towel that I use regularly. And I throw it in the wash and it comes back. Okay. So you're going to start by getting a good bit of white gesso out and just put it on your craft mat, palette, desk, whichever you're comfortable working with. You're going to be starting with a palette knife and not a brush. And then start with a good bit of the pink paint. And you can see I'm adding 2 different tiles because I'm going to use the gesso to change the color of the paint. So I get some variation, so there's some movement in the background. You can use a credit card for this or an old gift card, a palette knife, a piece of cardboard, anything with a flat surface. You don't want to do this with a brush. Okay. I'm just going to start mixing some of this. I want to get some variations. And because the impasto paint is such a thick paint, you're going to get texture in your background just by using it. And when you're mixing colors, the secret to laying your layers is that you want to dry in between layers that are going to get muddy. You're not going to have that to worry about that too much with this because it's shades of pink. But if you're mixing something like green or pink and you're laying it on top of each other, the secret, just dry in between, unless you're working with watercolor, which will of course react again. Okay. So for this, I'm building the background primarily here and here. So you can see that it's forming a triangle built with the center of my project being the focal point, which is the center of the triangle. So everything is pointing back into this. So for the composition, I want to be really heavy on one side and then drift off. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, I'll try and clarify. So we're going to start really heavy here and build across. Starting with my darkest color. And you're not going to have too much paint, just a little bit. And just start dragging it. Now, when you do this, don't make circles. Don't go diagonally, up and down, side to side. If you're going to do all circles, then do all circles. If you're going to do diagonal, only do diagonal. you're going to get a more uniform look just by keeping a certain pattern. And if you're getting too large of clumps, you have too much paint on your palette knife and you need to take off a little bit. A long time to be in silence, you guys.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. That's the difference with the in-person is you can talk and joke around or there's a radio going.
That's totally true.
So this is going to be the triangle. You can kind of see it. I'm going to give a quick dry to this and I'm going to start adding in the next layers. So if you were doing this, a background with watercolor, you would do the same thing. Just think of your triangle. Just know that watercolor will react. Is anybody asking questions about the original transfer or the original case?
Not yet.
Okay.
They typically don't ask questions unless they really have one or you ask them a question.
Okay.
Then people will get on their computer.
What do I want to know?
Well, how everybody's doing. Does anybody have any questions or?
No, I do want to know how everybody's doing. And now I'm just moving up to a lighter color and you can see the little bit of contrast. And we want to make sure this is 100% dry because the next layer to this is the transfers and they have to be dry. The canvas has to be dry for the transfers to adhere properly. With movement this way. Because when you're working with a watercolor, you would tilt your canvas to let it drip. This I'm pushing with the palette knife. No idea what that was. And if something happens and you don't like it, you can always cover it up with white gesso. It's a very forgiving process. Don't worry about it. It's all good. When I do this with other colors, I typically start with colors that are in the same, like a warm color. So I stick with yellows, oranges, and pinks. If I'm doing blues, it's blues, purples, maybe and greens. You can see this is getting a little muddy here, and that's because I didn't dry in between. So I'll add something on top of that because I don't like exactly how that looks. So a lot of times when I'm creating, you'll see me and I'll have a heat tool and a paintbrush or a heat tool and a palette knife. And it's just because I'm trying to keep everything from being muddy. going from the middle up. That way I get the motion, the movement that way instead of coming down. Building away from where my focal point is going to be. While I have this pink out, I'm going to grab a brush that I use to make most of my splatters. So I typically use a fan brush for that. But you can use any brush that you're comfortable with. I'm just going to add quite a bit of water to some of these tiles. And I'm going to add some splatters. I'm still trying to keep these top two corners relatively white to have my white space on my canvas. Using the gesso to make some white splatters on here. And there went the shirt. Okay. I'm going to clean this up. Only because you're watching me. Normally I would just put a paper towel on it. I would love to see everyone's desk when they're done. That's what I always like to see.
Yes, I think we'll definitely have to send you photographs of our desk.
I definitely want to see that. It's the messy part that's fun. So we're going to move on to the green paint. And for that, we need our leafy bits or resin pieces, clay pieces if you use the clay. We're going to put this off to the side to dry and grab our resin bits.
How's everyone doing? Are you ready to go on to the resin bits?
Yeah, that was my next question. I'm just laying
figured.
mine out.
We have a good yes.
Okay, so did I get a couple of thumbs up so I can start?
Yes, you got 3 of them, so go ahead.
Okay.
4 of them. You're good.
So I'm going to start with the resin bits. They're tucked in here. So if you're not using this particular mold, you're going to need approximately 3 or 4. You're going to want them to be peeking out here, here, and here. I hope that makes sense. Okay. So the first thing that you were supposed to do is you were supposed to have the resin bits and you were supposed to pour the clay pieces. I know that came with the kit. And you were supposed to have some white gesso on there. I missed a couple of spots, so I'm going to do that. For those of you who might still be doing yours too, because that's okay. You just want to make sure, even if you have a white clay piece that you're working with, that you do the gesso, because what we're doing here is a color wash and it will sink right into the clay. And that's why you needed to have the gesso on the resin or the clay. I really was very sloppy with this. This is what we're going to be creating. So without any dry brushing, you still get a lot of white highlights. And it's not just a solid color, and it brings out the accents in the mold. So go ahead and get your green paint. I, of course, am using Victoria green. If you don't have this, a liquid acrylic would work. An impasto paint, one of the metallic paints would work for this as well. A little dollop of green and water. You guys got to remember, these paints are very, very thick. They're heavily pigmented and they go a really, really long way. And you can add a lot of water and still get a ton of permanent color. So once I get a good watery mix, I'm going to go ahead and paint. You can see it's very light. Okay. And we're going to move kind of quickly, and I'll do it again on the next one. We're going to put this paint on here. We're going to grab our water bottle and get ready to spray. One little brush over just to get set it a tiny bit and spray it. You can use baby wipe, paper towel, or towel, and you're just going to dry off the pooled water or paint combination. So then you can see you get the leaves, a little bit of green, and then repeat. Does anybody have any questions on that? These are all simple techniques that you just keep combining in different orders or projects or with other techniques. And that one got a little too light, so I'm gonna add a little bit more. Because that's the wonderful thing about working with acrylics. You have lots of layers. If there's any that you want to add in, you can do that. I don't know what I was doing here. Are most people in the States or is everybody overseas? Where's everybody from? I think that I heard of Virginia or Atlanta. I didn't get to enjoy all that because I couldn't get my camera to work.
Jason and Nancy are from Indianapolis. Terry is from Chesapeake, Virginia. Susan is from Toronto.
Ooh.
Melissa's from Ranger, Georgia.
But Toronto is actually not far from me at all.
Oh. Let's see.
Just over the bridge.
Then there's New York. I know Sandra's in San Diego area. I'm in LA County area and both in California.
I am just south of Detroit.
Okay.
So if you are in Michigan, you know, you got a Michigander, they'll tell you where they live. I'm here.
And Lisa's in San Diego. Oh, I didn't see you come in. Hi, Lisa.
Just a tiny bit more. I ran out. And that's what this is. You can see why everybody had to do all that extra paint ahead of time, because the paint wouldn't have pulled up on the clay. Okay. And they're all similar, a little bit different here and there. Before you wipe your green paint up, bring back your canvas. You can see the movement there. Add a little bit more water. And just add a tiny bit of splatters. Don't go crazy. Just to bring that green in the background. Just a tiny bit. Let that continue to dry and move these up to dry. How is everybody on those resin bits? I don't know why my garbage is on the other side of the room.
Good, good.
Everybody's okay?
Looks like we got two goods.
I'm a pretty slow creator, so I should be pretty easy to keep up with.
Except for me, I'm the slowest one ever.
Yes, Jamie.
Slow and steady wins the race.
Right? Terry's good.
So this actually is very tedious, and it's very time consuming, and it's very frustrating, but it's worth it. So be patient with the process. And maybe if you want to practice on one of the transfers that you're not going to want to use in the canvas, like don't jump right into the main focal point. So what I'm doing is I'm going to, while my canvas is drying, I'm going to work with the acetate and transfer the transfers onto the acetate. And this is so we can layer them throughout the canvas because these transfers are gorgeous. And a lot of times if you're not working with furniture, they get lost in the background when you put the molds on top of them or the flowers on top of them or your pictures or more papers. They just get lost. So this is a way to bring them to the front. So I just have a bit of acetate that I use to make shakers. And like I explained, you can always use packaging. You can use clear transparencies for business. Anything like that would use. If it's thicker, just know it's going to be a little bit harder to cut. So the ones that I'm going to be transferring onto paper, or the acetate, I'm sorry, is this one here, this one here, this one, and I'll add this green leaf one too. I'm going to cut these out and put my transfers to the side so they don't get messy. Like I said, if you want to practice on one first, pick one that you're maybe not going to use, just so you get the feel for it, because it is different than transferring it to one of your furniture pieces or just the canvas itself. If you have a fancy tool for transferring, you can use that. I have a popsicle stick because that's what it came with. And I'm going to tell you right now, this is the hardest one to transfer, and it's because they are itty bitty, tiny little leaves. Let's start with this one. This is the easiest one to do. Just peel it away and place it on your acetate. Once it's placed, don't move it because you'll get wrinkles in your picture. And just like you would if it was on a project, just rub. Because the acetate is a slick surface, it is a little bit tough. It wants to move. And when you're applying the transfers, you know, you start to see the difference. You'll start to see like a little waxy finish on top. And that's how you know that it's adhered. So you can start lifting it. So once you see that little waxy finish, just start lifting your plastic and keep working back. Go slow. And if it starts to come up without your transfer being adhered, put your plastic back down and rub again. And once you take it all the way off, you're fine. And then you're fine too. You can make it work. Okay. So then now it's on the acetate. It's simple, but it's a little time consuming. I'm going to move to the next one. This one's going to be a little bit choppier, and I'm probably going to lose these tiny little bits here. But that's okay because I'm going to cut this into a couple of different sections anyways. Attach. I'm going to start where there's the most transfer so I can peel down. Just lifting the plastic as I go, working the transfer into place. Anybody have any questions on this? Anybody having a hard time?
Lanette, could you show us again the ones that you have selected to transfer
Yes.
onto the acetate?
It might be easiest on this little bit here. So on this page, the first page in the pack, I chose this flower here. For the second page, it's this leafy bit here with a pine, the palm leaves. I'm not sure what those are called. This tiny one in the middle here. And that's it. Yes, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you.
No problem. And you guys can use as many of these as you want. This is just a guideline. If you think the canvas needs more, then add more. But I'm a little stingy crafter, and I wanted to be able to use these on some other things in the future. No, I'm just joking. I like to have white space. But you can add as much of these as you want. Just think of them as fussy cuts bits of paper. Oh, that moved a little bit on me. And this is really slow and steady. Okay, so I only lost a tiny little bit there. Better put this over here. So pat in place, pick my end, rub and transfer. Too bad that leaf doesn't want to go. I do apologize if my phone goes off in the next half hour. It's not that I have to get up. It's just that I'm being notified that my husband's plane landed safe. I was telling the ladies in the beginning that he's flying home from the Czech Republic today. So I'm a little out of sorts because I don't usually do very well. When he's flying, I have a hard time sleeping.
That makes perfect sense.
He's traveled the whole time we've been married, and I'm fine when he's gone. I'm fine when he's in another country. It's just when he's in the air. I don't really know why. It's not really sane, but it is what gets me every time. And I worry when he has a transfer that he's going to miss his transfer and be stuck in Amsterdam or France, which, is not a bad place to be stuck.
But then he's not home with you, so that's huge.
Right.
So how did you get started, Lanette?
Started as a scrapbooker.
Yeah. Oh, scrapbooker.
I actually started as a scrapbooker. A flat scrapbooker. Like with the stickers. Back in I'm going to date myself here. I would say my first scrapbook was 2004.
Oh, not bad.
I didn't share anything publicly until my second daughter was born, and I decided to stay home and be a stay-at-home mom. And then I needed to have an outlet, so I went online. And then I started designing for a couple crafting stores that were local. I started teaching there, did a couple of kits. And it all goes from there. Probably like most people's stories. I've just always liked the flowers and the paper. And somewhere along the lines, I ventured into more of the paint and the mediums because I could do so much more. It was more my style than the people who created the paper, because I was able to add my touches, if that makes sense.
Perfectly.
But yeah, I was a scrapbooker. Like, what's that company called? Creative Memories, I think. Like that, yep. With that flat. Stampin' Up. Yeah, like back in the beginning, flat.
I remember Creative Memories too.
So this is the really trick one, guys. Just be really patient. And if you can fly through this, I bow down to you, because I can't. Yeah, I've created more scrapbook layouts this year since joining the Prima team than I probably have in the last 5 years. Because for my personal scrapbooks, I went digital. And I've just been playing with paint and layers and flowers ever since.
So you do your scrapbooks digitally. Do you print them out then? Or do you just leave them digital?
I usually print them up, but it's nothing fancy. It's just through like Shutterfly or
Nice.
one of those companies. I just I don't share typically any pictures of my kids.
Smart.
We just live in a strange world. And I like to keep them private. Almost there. And I'm going to get excited and try to go too fast. So don't let me. Yep, I lost that a little bit there. There we go. I only lost a tiny bit. Honestly, as many times as I've created this, this is the best I've done this one. So thank you.
Yay.
Okay, so now that I have these all on my clear acetate, I'm going to go ahead and cut them out. There's a tiny, for those of you who have used the transfers before, you can kind of see it's hard to see. There's a tiny little outer outline of the transfer. I try not to disturb that because I don't want to mess up the integrity of the transfer. So when I'm trimming it, I try to stay just outside of that. And just like paper, you're going to primarily move your transfer. That way your edges stay smooth when you're fussy cutting. So twist and snip. Things you guys already know. Sorry to be extra quiet, but when I have sharp, pointy objects, it's probably best if I focus. And one little transfer, ready to be added. Cut that one. And this leaf, I'm actually going to tuck in several different places. So I'm going to cut the leaves out. anybody that was a VIP, I think that's what it's called when you take all of the classes, and has completed a dresser, or not a dresser, a table and a panel and a canvas and watercolors. That's crazy impressive for 1 month. A lot of projects.
It's been a very creative month, that's for sure.
Yes. It's a wide spectrum of creativity, from furniture to watercolor to collage.
And your class has fit right in with all the others because we haven't done this before, and this techniques that you're teaching us. So your class has been a great addition.
Good, thank you. I am happy to be here. Now this one, try to cut a little bit extra, as close as much as you can, to give it the movement, because you don't want it to just be round. So try to cut a little bit in between each one of, well, not all of them, but some of them, so you still get the movement of the leaf. So I'll take most off, and then I'll go back in. You lose a little bit, just tell yourself it's okay. Even if you feel like it's not, it's fine. No one will probably notice. The only person that will know is you. And don't tell anybody. That'll be your secret. No one needs to know that leaf was there. If you're anything like me and your eyesight's starting to go, and you could see up close really well, and now not so much. You're just going to have to forgive yourself. So I'm cutting one in and then cutting the triangle out, just to create the little leaves. We're about an hour in. I think we're making decent time. Hopefully no one's drinking their tea like crazy, so they got to run to the restroom. But I guess that's the one benefit. Well, not the one, but a benefit to being at home. You can just run away and come back and no one even knows.
The bathroom is a lot closer than it is in the hotel.
Yeah, and it's not a public bathroom. So you know it's clean. I don't know, sometimes in the public bathroom at these events, you meet some people, and I've met some pretty amazing people waiting in line for the bathroom.
Very, very true.
Because, you know, most of us are women, that are doing this right now, or usually. Not that there aren't amazing male crafters, but they don't have the weight in the line. Their bathrooms are always open.
Well, that's why you go to the men's sometimes if the women's is out the door.
I think I've only done that once when I was pregnant. And the gentleman that was standing there told me to. He's like, you need to go. I was probably like 8.5 months pregnant. Probably looked like I was having twins.
Oh,
He was like, I'll watch the door for you.
that was sweet.
Just keep trimming. And I know it doesn't seem like that cutting these little branches out make a difference. But it's the tiny little details in a project like this that make it shine. So as tedious as this is, just keep trimming. All those extra bits that you don't think matter or that are in the background that you cover up, you'd be surprised how much they add. That's one of my favorite things about mixed media. There's so many layers and so much to the process. Even if you don't see it, you enjoyed the process. I know Anna always says, you know, everything goes through an ugly phase, but it's just a layer. These little bits are going to be everywhere. And my garbage is on the other side of the room.
And they're so hard to see, you don't even know that they're there.
Yes. And they're pointy at this point in time because they're little triangles, so they will poke you. So be careful. No calling and yelling at me if you got one stuck under your nail. Or you can call and yell at me. That's okay. Nearing the end. How is everybody else going? I still got one more, but this one's near the end. Don't answer because then you got to stop to type. This was not something I wanted to make you do in prep work. because I wanted to do the transferring part with you. So I'm sorry if anybody has hands that ache when they have to fuss cut.
It's very therapeutic though.
I've always said that, and I enjoy
Therapeutic.
it. But some people detest fussy cutting.
For someone who has arthritis, it's not the best therapy for me.
Right. But see, that's what I'm apologizing for.
But it makes it look so pretty, so it's okay.
It really does, and it adds so much. And these transfers are so beautiful. I just hate to have them lost in the background. They add to it, but they're so pretty. You just want them up front. I can't remember the first time I did this on one of my canvases. See, so I even have a little bit of cracks there, and it won't matter in the canvas at all. So don't be upset. I didn't even realize that was there. I must have moved my transfer when I was applying it.
So Terry has commented that she likes this technique of adding the transfer to acetate. And I have to agree, Terry, I've never done this before, and it's really a lovely technique.
Yeah. That's the thing that I enjoy, is just trying to find as many little layers that I can tuck in. And this is a way to make another one. All around these leaves. You're gonna appreciate your die cuts from here on out. No, fussy cutting is tough, Terry. I know it's aggravating on the hands. And I've always enjoyed it. I mean, there's collections that I sit down with, and the minute I get it, I just start cutting and put them in a baggie. I'll sit in my living room and just snip. My husband thinks I'm crazy. And he also gets aggravated with the paper. Everybody, it's not like I'm doing needlepoint or crocheting. It's the same kind of thing.
Can you show us again the leaves and how you cut those ones out?
So these ones, can you see
No,
them that way?
The leaves by themselves. I remember you did something special with those.
That's just however you want. It doesn't matter too much. I just snipped them in the
Okay.
clusters.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And you could cut them out and use them and snip them when you're tucking them in. I just wanted to have these ones for extra in case I wanted to add something. Okay, how is everybody doing on their cutting? I'm going to take a minute and try to get all this plastic in the garbage. I hope that's okay.
Susan is saying that she's only on her second one, so maybe a few more
But it's
minutes.
half done. That's great. Got time.
Susan, you're farther along than I am. Good job. Good job.
I gotta remember, I've done these quite a few times in the last couple of days. I had some warm-ups.
Well, Angie just told us you're a master fussy cutter if you do it.
Yeah, and I
Free
do like the
time.
fussy cut. I don't like these little plastic bits, so. And I usually use my glass mat that's over here, but it's not good for filming. So everything sticks to this mat. But it makes it easier for you guys to see. Everything has a trade-off, right?
Exactly.
I used to have such fancy nails. And now I don't. So I don't want to come off. Okay. So if anybody is ahead or not ahead, they haven't painted their chipboard yet, they can work on that. I am looking at this and I think I'm going to actually want another piece. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and paint one of my chipboards white. And usually when I paint my chipboards, I usually use the gesso, obviously, or acrylic paint. And I know you guys are still cutting. I'm just kind of talking while you're cutting. But I always use a sponge when I'm painting my chipboard. It's a little bit easier. And for those of you that started as stampers, this would be an easy thing to emboss with white embossing powder. And it'd be a way to use your stamping products in your mixed media products.
That's a great idea. I have so many embossing powders. I don't even know what to do with all of them.
Put them on your chipboard.
But they're so pretty, aren't they?
They're very
They're
pretty on my
gorgeous.
shelf, but I want them to be pretty useful. They look beautiful on my shelf.
Yeah, that's just it. They get put on the shelf, and if you don't use them from time to time, you forget. So even if it's just a little bit to put embossing powder here, you'll find yourself reaching for it more often. But I didn't want to add anything else to the kit. And if you don't have these chipboards, because these are lovely, but you can always use just little die cuts from white cardstock or the collection that you're using. They go in wonderfully with clusters. I do paint both sides of the chipboard because you might see it and it would make me crazy if you did. Side to side. Clean my sponge off. How is your cutting going along? Guessing you guys are about on your third piece. Ready for next time.
Jason and Nancy are on their final piece. Terry's done.
Terry, look at that. I know how much she likes the fuss cutting. And your paint should be dry, but just in case. Give it a little extra love. Okay. You guys want me to go, or do you want me to keep, do you want me to hold up?
Let's see, Susan, how are you doing? How's the other people besides?
Couple of minutes, please. Okay. Let me put this back up here.
Do we want to take a little break then?
I'm gonna drink some water if that's okay.
We could take a little break and stop the recording, and then those people that are done can go and do a potty break or coffee break or whatever they need.
I was gonna wonder if you guys did that about 1:30, because that's the
Okay, we
halfway
can
mark.
wait.
Oh no, we're almost there.
Of course.
That's where I was in my head, that we would at 1:30 anyhow. So that sounds like a plan.
So shall we break now until 1:30? That's 12 minutes.
I'm good with that.
Perfect.
Whatever you ladies want.
Fabulous. Okay, we'll pause the recording and we'll be back at 10:30 or 12:30.
Sounds great.
Okay, see you now.
Hopefully everybody's made it back. Okay. So if you're all done fussy cutting and you have your bits safely off to the side, we're going to go back to the transfers for the pieces that we're going to apply to the canvas. So this pink one here, this pink one here, this green one, and then this one here with the olive branches right now. And then we'll probably add in a little bit of this one and possibly this one. Okay, so just go ahead and cut those four, the 2 pink and 2 green. Now that you have these four, I'm not really going to use too much of these stems. It doesn't matter. You can leave them on there and just overlap them. You're not going to see them underneath the cluster, but I'm just going to trim that one and this one. So before you go further, if you wanted to, again, I didn't want to add anything else to this kit, but this is the point where you could still add random stamping in the background and it would still be dispersed through your canvas. So if you wanted to add like little script stamps, this would be the place to add that, so you would see that throughout the canvas. So I can do that if you guys want me to show you how it adds in the back, or we can just skip it. Any vote?
I would think go ahead and add it. What do you think, Jamie?
I'm going to add it. That way you guys know that you don't have to, because it's not part of the kit. But just so you can see how the little bits add to the overall effect and It's not in the last one, so you'll see the difference. So I just use a waterproof ink. I'm going to use a script stamp. And these are just fins. I think they're like $1.50. I don't know. I had them forever. And you can use any stamp that you have. It doesn't have to be fins. It doesn't have to be Primas. You just want it to be a tiny script or numbers or newsprint, even little paint blotches. Just a random stamp. Little text is really good too. Okay. And just move it around. Following that bit that we already did. And I never stamp the whole stamp, just a little bit. Now, the one thing that the kit did come with was the watercolor. And I didn't originally do it on my canvas because watercolor is reactive. And when you add a medium on top of it, of course, it's going to make more of a muddy kind of effect because it's going to re-react. But if you wanted to, you could use the watercolor here and add a little bit of splashes. I'm going to do that at the very end. That way I used it. But I believe that if I had to guess, Sharon probably had intended the watercolor to touch up the original face and then probably add some of the smoky effect in her movement. So for this, I kind of had to admit that. I'm sorry. Omit that. Okay. So back to our transfers. Just some random stamping in here. Just a tiny little bit. I'm going to place. So these go different directions. Kind of see they come together. And for this, I want them to go apart. So this one's going to go on the top and this one goes on the bottom. And for placement, you can see it's kind of in the middle. So it's going to be just off to the side, about halfway through your canvas is going to be the top of the flower. And then the second one is down here. And when you're using your transfers, you want to kind of position them and decide what's going to be on top and what's going to be on bottom. And for me, I think I want to go with this one on the top and this one on the bottom. So I'm going to do this pink flower first. Now remember that your paint is bumpy. So be patient while you're applying your transfer. And you're going to want to do it just the same way you did with the acetate. Just nice and slow. If that was me, I'm sorry. Thought I had that on mute. That must be his plane landing. Just remember, start at the top or at the bottom, but don't go back. Don't go from top to bottom. Just work slowly, lifting as you go. That way you know that everything's in place. And it's a little bit more difficult because it is a bumpy background. I moved a little bit. That's okay. So then I'm going to offset this one down here. Go there. I want the green one to be on the bottom here with the, I'm guessing those are olives. Yeah, right about there. So maybe about 4 inches in. And just remember, the skinnier the transfer is, the more likely it's going to be a hard time. Just keep working with that popsicle stick. It doesn't seem very exciting, but it has a beautiful effect. You can see I'm just lifting as I go. And you guys, this is the way I do it. If someone has taught you a way that you are happy with, or you found a way that works for you, I am not recreating the wheel here. We are all a little bit different, and whatever works easier for you is totally fine. This is just what works for me. I have a green and a pink. We're going to layer pink on the bottom. They're just overlayered a tiny bit. I wanted to make sure that this is going to peek out to the side of the cluster, because you're going to have a branch that comes down here. So continue to get that little fog and pull back. Rub, fog, pull back. Okay. Anybody have any questions on this? I think it's pretty straightforward. Just remember, slow and steady. Just be a turtle. And do the last green one for this cluster. The nice thing about these transfers is they have the white background. So even though I'm putting them on top of this pink paint, you see the green. Some of the other transfers in the market I know don't have that white base, so you don't necessarily see your color of your image if you're not working on a straight white background. So it's a benefit to these. The piece. Almost there. Where we're at here. How's everybody making progress on that? Guessing everybody is pretty good. Yes, okay. So I'm gonna start positioning my resin bits.
We have a halfway done, finished with transfer.
I'm not gluing anything down. I'm just positioning. I am just positioning my resin pieces, and I'm just trimming anything that maybe doesn't fit the way that I want it to. So this is my base layer that I'm going to build everything on top of. So I want to try to make kind of a level surface to build everything up where I know I'm going to have the heaviest clusters. So I'm going to dangle this off a little bit off the canvas because I always like to do that. I'm sorry, excuse me.
Sorry, Lanette, you just muted. If you could unmute yourself.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure how that happened.
Perfect.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and work on placement here. Any questions on how I've laid this out, the resin bits that we've worked with? If you're working with something different, you just kind of want to have a base layer, something where everything's going to stick out. At this point in time, if you have a picture, it's handy to kind of figure out where it's going to be placed. So you can see it'll be about there. Another way to do that is just to cut a piece of cardboard about that size and work with that. That way you don't ruin your picture. So I'll just go ahead. And I usually use you can see on the canvas, there's a chipboard base, which was just a piece of chipboard I had. You can use cardboard. And it's just so you have somewhere to stick your picture, quote, or whatever. So that way I didn't have to worry about my picture being ruined. So obviously cut that smaller than the size of the picture that you're going to use. You can paint it white or you can leave it brown. So you want your bits sticking out just a little bit. So once you have your placement where you want it to be, go ahead and start applying your leaves or greenery. The one thing is when you're adhering this bottom branch, try not to glue your leaves because you're going to slide some transfers in there after. So just glue at the base. So just at the top here. For this, I'm using the 3D gloss gel. If you don't have that handy, I know one of the ladies is working with the Gorilla Glue. You might want to use the hot glue to hold it in place ahead of time. I'm not sure on the dry time on the Gorilla Glue. And with a gloss gel or matte gel, if you have any that sneaks out from your resin or your clay, don't worry about it too much. It's going to dry clear, so you won't see it. But if you want to wipe it off, that's good too. Okay, now before this is 100% dry, am I muted again?
No, you're not unmuted. You were just echoing, but you're not unmuted.
Okay, am I echoing now?
Yes, you are.
Yeah. Well, both of your
How
microphones.
about now?
Yep.
Okay. And now.
There you go.
All good.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. Something happened when I got up to get my kid, and I'm not sure what I did. Apologize for that. So is everybody good with the placement?
Can you put the picture on again so we can see?
Yes. And that's not where it's going to stay because we're going to raise it up, but that kind of gives you an idea. And if you want to, the gel has a little bit of work time. You can still move it a little bit. Hot glue is not so forgiving. Now I do want to add just a couple more transfers over here, but I wasn't 100% sure where this is going to finish. So I'm going to slide them under. So I'm going to take a little bit of this one right here. You can use as much of this or as little as you want, or you can completely leave it off. But I just know I want to add a tiny bit. And because my gel isn't 100% dry, I can still do that. It's one of the benefits of working with the heavy body gel or the 3D gloss gel. While it holds everything in place while you're working with it, you still have wiggle room. I didn't mean to move it that much, but that's okay. And you guys can add as many transfers in the background as you want. Or if you want to skip any of these ones, you can as well. It's completely up to you. Or maybe you're working with different transfers altogether. doesn't want to come up. Put that right back in place. And just a little bit under there. You can add some more maybe up here if you wanted to, or over here. Just wanted a little bit more green here. And maybe I'll think about that. I didn't on the last one, but when I was staring at it, I was like, well, that kind of looks like it might look nice up there, but we'll wait. Okay. Strongly don't recommend using your picture. If you do use your picture, you can always print another one and double layer the picture. That way, if you do get something on your picture, you're okay. But I'm going to work with the cardboard base, and I'm going to build this up. So using my 3D gloss gel, I'm going to add a tiny bit of cardboard. You're going to want to have a couple pieces of cardboard on hand once we start getting to our flowers to level them and build them up as well. Guessing everybody is still with me.
Jason and Nancy said, we are with you.
Yay! Okay, so real fancy technique here, guys. 2 bits of cardboard. Now we've built, that picture is going to be up. I'm not going to tear it down yet until we start playing with our flowers so we know where everything's going to be. So go ahead and grab your flowers. We have 2 packs of flowers. I think I used everything except for maybe one of these, the leaves, this one, and maybe one of these. So there's a lot of flowers on this canvas, guys. Go ahead and open them up. Make sure you have your gloss gel ready. If you're using hot glue, make sure that you're 100% sure before you use it. It's a rip. And you can, by all means, use these leaves. I just didn't. And you're going to want to have your sizzle, this fiber. You guys, this little bag will go a long, long way. You're not going to use a ton of this, but it just adds a lot to the project. I'm going to break this up a little bit so it's a little easier for me to get once my hands are all sticky. I'm just going to pull Only because you guys have to watch me do this. So I don't want you to see how covered in glue I get. Because no one wants to see that. Okay. So I have this fun little base here. We could paint it. If you want to paint it, we could paint it, but I'm just going to cover it up anyways. So we're going to stick that down. And if it's not level, see how it's, you can see like I'm not level because it's in between the molds. So you can see it's teetering. So I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of cardboard in there just to make sure everything is level. And that's the handy thing about having cardboard, is you can make sure everything is going to be flat, level, and my dad would be proud. So the middle of the picture is a little off-centered, but your picture is still in the middle of your canvas. For this, I started with the larger base flowers. So these are these three here. And I always try to group in threes. And I tried to break up the flowers that are very similar together. So like I wouldn't put this one right next to this one. This one in here. I try to break up my colors. I try to break up the petals if they're different. I try to break them up. So, but before I glue these down, the one thing that I noticed when I was working with these two sets of flowers is the one pack of flowers has tiny little bits of white. So I want to make these flowers match. So once I figure out which ones I'm going to use, I'm going to use a little bit of white gesso and dry brush those petals. So grab out your gesso. I just use a fan brush. And I'm sure you guys have done this before. Make sure your paintbrush is dry. Just a tiny bit of gesso goes a long, long way. Wipe some off on your napkin or hand, and then just get the tips of your petals. White crackle paste is actually a great way to do this on the flowers. For whatever reason, it stands out tremendously, and then sometimes you'll even get a little crackle, and it looks really, really beautiful. So I'm just adding a tiny bit of white. It's a little bit more than this one had, but I wanted to make sure the flowers were cohesive. I hope that makes sense. Oops, I can get the leaves out. I'm just trying to touch the edge to mimic the other flowers. And then I'll use one of these. I'll use this one. The more peachy one color. Okay, that's my husband's suitcase rolling across the kitchen floor. He is home safe and sound.
Yay, well done. I'm so happy that he's home.
Yes. My daughter, the 13-year-old, was obviously getting concerned too, because that was her question. Where's dad? Well, I don't know. Okay. Whenever you're building a cluster, it seems like I position things 1,000 times and move them off and put them back because I want to make sure that I have everything in the right spot. The reason why I use a gel medium is because it gives me a ton of wiggle room, but you don't want to put too much because you don't want to damage your flowers. So you really want to be comfortable where your cluster is going to be, where your placement is, what's going to be seen, what's not going to be seen, what flowers are going to be on the bottom, what's going to be up on the top. Oh, I forgot to do these little guys. This cluster of 3. Sorry about that. And I could do this after the canvas was all put together, but it's so much easier to do it ahead of time. That's just a little bit. So at the base of all these base flowers, so at the bottom of all these base flowers, you're going to take a little bit of your thread or sisal or moss or whatever you're using. You're going to cluster it. You want to make sure you don't have a big gob, just a tiny little bit, couple pieces. Give it a little tiny twist. And that's going to be what's at the base of your flower. So glue on your flower. That's a lot, but it'll be fine. And stick it down. As you know that this one is going to go on top. So you want to kind of position that you can see this flower through your transfer. So you know where you're working by placing this one on top. Everybody understand that? Don't glue this down. You're just trying to use it to position. Okay. Repeat that process for the next flower.
Did you glue your picture down? Your picture
No.
base? No, the base. Did you glue it down?
This chipboard is glued down, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry if that was unclear. I think that was when I had an echo.
I'm behind. It's okay.
I'm sorry. Now this one is the one that's wound up being half on the resin and half off. So it gets the little teeter totter. And you can leave it. You can stick another flower underneath it. I like it to be stable. So I just add a tiny bit of chipboard, cardboard, or foam tape. I have cardboard right now, so that's what I'm using. And now that'll make it stable because this flower is going to rest on top of here. So I need to make sure that it's going to be level. Okay. And continuing adding flowers. And adding tiny bits of the sisal at the bottom of the flowers as I want to. Some of them, you don't have to do it with everyone. On the base ones, I tend to do more of it. And I know some people like their flowers to be bunched up. I like them to flow more through the canvas. So I tend to spread them out a little tiny bit. So they're not touching, but that's why I'm using the transfers to build in those different flowers. So it looks like a bunch of flowers with different layers and depth. I'm sure that's clear as mud. And this rose over here needs to be on top of that little bit of resin as well. So it'll be raised above when you adhere, because you're going to adhere your transfer to that rose. So make sure that it's on that resin piece so it's high enough. All about the balance of layers. Hoping. Okay, let me change my earbud. One of them just died. Okay, now I can still hear. Someone say something to me, please.
We can still hear you.
I just want to make sure I can hear you. Okay. And then up at this top one, it's going to peek under your picture just a tiny bit. This is going to do wonders for your vacuums, guys. Just ahead of time. Fit under there. Okay. You guys can twist these little tiny bits and you can tuck them in wherever you want them, if you want more or less. And you can give your canvas a haircut if you got too much. Just a little, you know, trim. Yeah, that's beautiful, but sometimes it can be a bit much. Okay, so you barely see it, but it just adds those little fibers. You can kind of see. And like something like this, you can do it very sparingly, like this, or like the people that were here and I showed the canvas earlier. You can do a big clump to fill a hole. So if you wanted to fill a hole, this is a nice way to cover something up. Okay. You can start layering in some of your chipboard. And just however many pieces you want. I'm probably going to talk in about 3. Maybe I used a little bit of extra resin here, so maybe only 3. I always try to work in odd numbers too. So maybe don't put 6, or if you do, space them out. Gonna stick this little flower up here because I think it looks nice there. And this always winds up a tiny different from each canvas, you guys. And it's just because sometimes your placement is a tiny bit off. But when you're layering in your chipboard, put a tiny bit of glue on the top, a tiny bit on the bottom, and just start tucking it in. Just a little nip tuck. Anywhere where you think you're missing something or you want a little more. This one, I love this chipboard, but I'm going to be frugal and cut it and have a bunch of it over here and the rest over here. So I have 3 on this side, 1 over here. So I'll probably tuck another one in around here. That's huge. So whenever I'm putting my chipboard in, I'm trying to position it on a piece of the resin so you get that space underneath. So it's another layer of dimension. So every place I put a chipboard, it's been on a flower or a piece of resin, just so it's not glued flat to the canvas. You guys can kind of see that. This is a lot of stuff down here. Okay. I'm going to move on to these 3. And we're going to tuck them in wherever you like. I'm going to put one here, and right around this flower here. One thing, because these do have these wires, you can always take a paintbrush and just wrap and make your own little curly cue. Just kind of adds a little something, something. And that way they peek up a little bit. Slide that in. A little twist. And that one's too long, so I'm going to cut it. This one I know is too long. I'm just going to try to twist that vine a little bit. And tuck this in. Okay. Still have these little flowers over the side. I'm going to adhere this pink one. Now we're going to start tucking in the tiny green leaves, the ones that we cut up. I think I might have lost one. And it's just wherever you want to just reach under the flower and push it in. You can even add it on top of the bottom layer of a flower so it's still lifted. And now the pink, let's see where to go. This one here, I have it placed here. That's up to you. But that is where I have it placed. Kind of filling in the gap between this large flower and the tiny pink one. So everything is, it's a cluster, but it's spaced out because you're still going to have a layer on top of here. So you want to make sure that you're getting the most bang for your buck of your flowers. Hope that makes sense. Okay. Just so you can see how that's where we're at with the picture. And just keep placing your picture to make sure you're happy with where everything is going. Okay, so how's everybody with that?
Still building up layers on my end.
Okay.
How's everybody else doing?
I'm going to try to leave this here, but now we're going to go on to the green leaves. And I'm going to take my time and go super slow. So just keep building. And I'll wait. And if you need me to bring it closer, or I just remember, you guys, just because this is where I have it placed, it doesn't have to be exactly the same for you guys. Each one of these canvases have been a little tiny bit different. So I know Elena worked really hard to find these leaves. And I call these leaves many bad names.
Actually, Sharon found them.
Sharon found them. I had no idea
Yeah.
what I was gonna do. So I sat and I stared at them and I was like, what am I gonna do? And you can use them to tuck if you want to hide some of your cardboard. That was my initial thought. But what I wound up doing, and I'm really happy that this happened because I never would have done this before, is I plucked one off as I was yelling at it. And I was just like, oh, it has this nice little bendy thing on the back. And if you take your nail and you peel it apart, you wind up with a really cool little stick. And it matches this canvas perfectly. So go ahead and peel off a bunch of these when you're done with your layers, and then we'll work on the next part from the leaves. So just peel and do whatever you want with this. Sorry, Sharon.
I think it's a great idea, different use for them.
Yes. It was just what worked for me. And I never would have ever done it before. But honestly, I really like these. And they add a really a lot. It just, there's a whole bunch here and up here. And they're so easy to tuck in. Honestly, they really do add a lot, but I never would have thought of it had I not been staring at this branch. And it really just depends on how many you want to do. I'm probably getting carried away. They come apart. Super easy. Cool. Okay. So that's my little giggle. And then after you pluck off all these leaves, you're left with this wonderful bit of green wire, well, plastic covered wire. So I snipped a couple off. You can use some Tim Holtz scissors. I always have wire cutters in my room. And then I use that same paintbrush and I twisted it. A bigger paintbrush will make a larger coil. And then I'm just going to tuck that in. And I did a couple, I think I did 3 of these. And you can go back and touch a little bit of white gesso on there if you want, just to make it blend in a little bit. Let's
Lanette, could you show us where you have already glued down the acetate, you know, the transfers on the acetate? Where in your layout have you placed them?
I've only placed one major flower, and that's here. And then I tucked in the leaves over here. And then I placed one over here. And one right here. And there's one here. So 4 spots for the leaves. 1, 2, 3, 4. And the one pink is filling the gap between the small pink and this base layer here. Does that help?
Perfect, thank you.
Back to bending wire. And I placed another one here. You don't really see it, but it helps the acetate be balanced. And anywhere that you think something isn't where it needs to be, just lift and tuck. If you want to raise something up, that's the benefit of the gel. These will be last. Now here's the thing. You can place your picture and be extremely careful. I have huge problems with that. I'm a messy, messy person. Or you can strategically place your transfers and then tuck your picture in after. That's what I do. But if you want to glue your picture, now is when you want to do that. I am a coward and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to put a dab of gel on this flower here. And I'm going to balance it. There. And you can't really use your heat tool to dry that because the acetate will melt. So don't do that. And if you're using hot glue, a tiny drop. Don't do too much because it'll bubble up your acetate. See, because then your picture will
And you
just
glued that
pop.
directly to the flower?
I put that right on the flower.
Perfect, thank you.
And if it's not balancing, if you're having a hard time, take a piece of your chipboard from that you painted white and stick that to your flower. And then right there. And that might make it a little less tippy for you. Once it's dry, it's fine. It's just the process in between. And then the last one goes on top of this flower here. And it's a large one, so a bit of chipboard works great here. So chipboard, glue on both sides, right on top of the flower. And I have this so this little seed or bud is pointing towards the flower because it directs more to the picture. It's kind of like pointing in, but that's up to you. Okay. Then tiny little flower with a little bit of sisal. Placed right here. Remember on the bottom of the flower. And stick that right down. And then I added one right on top of here. And you guys can add more. There's still more flowers left. This is just where I had my placement. Little bunch of thread and flower. Kind of put that off to the side a little bit. Okay. Gonna start sticking these little pokies. Just gonna dip them right in my gel and place them wherever my heart desires.
Now you did something with the stem of the olive leaves, correct?
Yes,
Can you
they are
show-
twisted here
Okay.
and up here.
Okay, pretty.
So
Thank
to
you.
do that, you just, let me cut off a piece. Oh. Just with their paintbrush, just like with the flowers, just wrap it around and it'll just make a little curly that you can tuck in.
Pretty.
And those are handy to have. Because honestly, I typically take wire and wrap it with floral tape to make those. I never would have thought to just buy a leaf. I don't know why. My brain just wouldn't have gone there. And you're just gonna tuck. I just dip whatever glue. You guys, I'm messy. But I'm just dipping and sticking these little sticks and little pokies wherever you think they might look nice. My clock is out of the way. I'm sorry, something got moved. How am I doing on time?
You're doing great. It's only 11:45. So you still have, well, technically we go until 12:30 so people can show off their work, but you still
Okay.
have at least 15 minutes. So
Okay, good.
you can go over if you need to.
Okay. But this was everything with the kit. So at least I made that. But I wanted to show you guys how I would add in the extras. And this, honestly, it's just a matter of tuck, 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 tuck. Just keep tucking it in. When you think you're done, do one more. I know that sounds great. But when you think, if it's seriously, it's like when you think, oh, it's beautiful, just add one more thing. One tiny thing, not a big thing. Okay. So you guys can kind of see these little sticks coming out everywhere. Okay. And I'm sorry, I have to excuse myself. Oh, it's just the dog. Never mind. Okay. So here's where I would add art stones. Actually, I'll take that back. I would add in effect paste next. And the magic potion matches this canvas really well. And the unicorn matches everything. And if you're heavy-handed, the unicorn paste is the perfect place to start because it can go everywhere and it's not going to take over too much. So I'll let you guys vote. Which one do you want me to use? Magic or unicorn?
Well, Lanette, Lisa says you created such a beautiful canvas. So let's see what people say.
Everybody's
Magic
so busy
potion.
Magic
viewing.
and
Okay.
magic. I think you got magic.
Okay. Magic potion it is. This is well loved too. Can you tell? think
pretty.
this is the first one I got. Okay. So I use a bit of a palette knife for this. And you just want to add this anywhere. You can put this on your flowers. You can put this on your canvas directly on the resin. It's going to look cloudy, but it's going to dry clear. And anything that you sprinkle in it is going to stick. So just be mindful of that. Sorry to give you a little bit of motion sickness, but I'm going to try to get some on this chipboard over here to add a little bit of shine. And that's just keep moving your canvas around. Just stick it where you want. I'm going to try to build mostly around where my picture is. And anything that I'm trying to camouflage or add to. You can kind of see just a little bit. It's just adding a tiny little bit. But all those tiny little bits all together make a huge difference. Just push it under the flower a little bit and pull it up. Sorry to keep turning on you guys. And this is tricky because now you got all those little strings, little fibers. So they're not the easiest things to work around. And my paste is a little dried out. Guess that means I need to get more. Use this up and buy more.
Now, is this a product that you can add water to and reconstitute it, or?
This is a gel-based product. I wouldn't use too much water in it. If you needed to add something to it, I would recommend adding some fluid medium to it.
Okay.
It won't change it too much. Or even add the soft gloss gel. That way it wouldn't change it up too much. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Because I know if your soft gloss gel or one of your other mediums starts to dry out, you can wet it and put the lid back on. And
Oh yeah, if you're just gonna spray a little bit in there and close it up, that's fine. But to try to
oh yes, work
but to
with
try
it
to
and-
remake it.
Yeah, that's not possible.
Yeah, no, but if you're just trying to keep it moist, absolutely. Just spray a little bit in before you close it if you live in a really dry place. Or you can even use saran wrap on top of your lid. That helps too.
That's a good tip.
Yeah. So like I just put the saran wrap on and then put the cap on. And anything that I know has a tendency to dry out.
That's a great tip.
Telling you guys, I'm cheap.
It's not cheap, it's frugal.
Exactly what I was going to say. Frugal is not a bad thing. It's the best F word.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, yes.
It's because you want to make more projects and you want to craft more. Oh, Jason and Nancy say thrifty.
Oh,
Thrifty's
thrifty.
a good one.
That's a good one too. You could have added the magic potion before you laid everything down, but this way you're getting to place it where you want it and not where you think you might. I always use the effect paste last. I'm going to put some up underneath where this flower is placed. Just to add a little bit there because I really wanted to on the last canvases. That's the hard thing when you're trying to stick to a kit to make it so people can recreate, so everybody can go along. You have those things that you love that you just can't add. But you guys can because you're at home, and maybe you won't, but maybe you will in the future on your next one. Okay. And I'm trying to get a little bit on the chipboards. And then I'm going to go in with my art stones next. Okay. You can just see all that sparkle, and it changes it from matte to a little bit of glam.
That looks beautiful.
You can use the 3D matte gel that you have. You can use glossy gel. You can use glossy accents. I typically use the soft gloss gel because it's already shiny. For the art stones. And a paintbrush that I do not love because I'm probably gonna jack it all up. I've learned to take the gel out, put it on my mat, and work from there, because if not, I wind up with a bunch of art stones in my gel. I'm just going to start placing a little bit of art stones on my leaves, tiny bits on the resin leaves, I'm sorry. Maybe a little bit on the flowers, not too much. And it's tricky because that string. Let's get a little tangled up in there. And just because you can't see it from the top, look at the side of your canvas and see where you want to put something, where you're missing something. So work on different angles, because if you're only looking at the top, when someone looks at this side, they're going to see a gap. And you don't want that. All your little nooks, all your little crannies. If you got a little bit of cardboard sticking out, that is when you place an art stone. They do wonders for hiding everything. And I don't know if it's because they're white against the contrast and then it attracts the attention, or just because they're wonderful. But just move around and place. I'm going to stick kind of a lot under this canvas where there's a hole under the picture, and just build that up. And drag them out. And I hope everybody's not upset that I'm adding these extra things that weren't in the kit. I just figured while you have a second, I would show you how I would take it a little bit further.
Of course not. It's a great idea. Extra stuff to do.
Well, and hopefully it's something you already have on your shelf that maybe you haven't used in a while.
One of those must-buy things, and then you never use it.
Nobody does that.
Never.
Never.
None of us have those in our shelves. No.
No, I'm sure you don't. I do. Everywhere.
Right? I have a lot of the used ones because I wanted to see how it worked, and then haven't used it since.
I need to learn with colors, especially to try one and then go from there. Like, I don't need every color if I'm just trying it.
What?
So like when you buy a spray,
Yeah.
a new spray, I don't need to buy 12. I just need to buy one.
But
See if I like it.
they're always having a sale though.
Yeah, I know. It's not helpful to my pocketbook.
No.
Okay. So then from here, I would take my gel or glossy accents or any type of glue that is clear, and I would touch a little bit on the flowers to add a little bit of glue, a little bit of sparkle there. I'm sorry.
Terry commented, what? Only buy one? That's insanity. I totally agree.
Well, for Terry, I know it is. I've seen her stash of colors.
Ah.
She has the same problem I have. Okay, I'm just using a white glitter, a clear glitter, a coordinating glitter, any glitter would work. And I'm just going to use a touch of glossy accent because there's so much sticky on here. Because wherever I stick this, it's going to go into, wherever I sprinkle, I'm sorry, it's going to go right into the effect paste and anywhere that I added the art stones. So I'm going to just use a tiny, tiny bit with my flowers.
So we
And not all of them,
Okay.
just a couple. Or maybe I'm
Okay.
not.
Kay is saying, how about when you buy double and triple of something you already have? Oh yeah.
Oh, I can't even. I've done that, absolutely. And then I find it right after.
Always. You search and search and search and you can't find it. So you get another one and then boom.
Yes. So I'm just adding a little bit of glue anywhere where I want this sparkle.
Terry says, my mom calls it DUPE because I'm famous for that. Oh, dupe. Calls my
That's hilarious.
Jason and Nancy call it the CSS, Complete Set Syndrome, and they are members of that club. I think we all are.
That is a good name.
I like the CSS. I do have that. I do.
They sound like my kind of people.
It's an awesome club to belong to. My husband
Just
would
a little bit
disagree,
of
but
sprinkle.
What'd you say, Sandra?
I said my husband would disagree, but I like that club.
Yeah, it's, and you know, it's got great members. They're just
Yeah.
loving.
Spouses don't always understand.
No, this is true. Sorry, I don't mean to be spitting on you guys. But that glitter is, the hole is a little bit bigger in the new. in the new container. Okay. And that's really where I would leave that. I would put my picture on there. Maybe touch a little bit on my twisties with the white, anywhere that I think maybe is sticking out too much. And that's it. Not sure exactly how I wound up on time. I think I did okay. What's in here?
Terry and Susan say they're both part of the CSS club.
And there we have it.
Yeah, those few little things just made it pop so much differently. And
Yeah,
Jason,
it makes
Jason and
a
Nancy say
huge
wonderful work.
difference. Because from
I
here,
mean, that one is absolutely gorgeous.
but to here.
Personally, I love glitter and sparkle.
Right. And if you don't, then this is your way. But if you like that extra little pow,
Susan says stunning.
I get to see what you guys made.
Any other questions?
Oh yeah, any
for,
other questions?
Lanette, before we turn off the recording? I'm finding sizzle everywhere.
You are. And then you're going to find it in your vacuum too.
Those little like art stones are everywhere in on my table right now.
Art stones, glitter, Cecil. The green leaves.
Susan says, I have to leave. I have relatives coming from Cleveland. I will post a picture. Thank you, Lanette, Jamie, and Sandra. I can't wait for the next one. Thank you
Thank you so much
Susan.
for being here.
Thank you, Susan.
Anybody else before we stop a recording or? Try to close up containers.
Melissa says, thank you. I enjoyed making this and we'll post a picture. Don't forget, you guys, I do create a post in the Prima ArtVenture by Gather group, and you can go ahead and please post your pictures there so that everybody can see them, and Lanette will be tagged as well.
Yeah, and if you share it on Instagram, please tag me. I would love to see it. I mean, I'll see it in the Facebook group, but if you put it on Instagram, please tag me. I'd love to have that pop up. I always like to see how everything turns out, especially in this scenario where everybody kind of got to maybe put together their own kit if they didn't have everything, if they were sourcing their own. I like to see what they decided to work with. Oh, this is never good. This is supposed to go in a jar.
Terry says, I have to think about how to finish my butterfly.
Oh. I would have to see it to help you, Terry. Not that you need my help. I'm sure you can do it by yourself, but I'm happy to help. Because Terry, I believe, is, like I had mentioned, she's working on a smaller canvas without a picture.
Gotcha. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and end the recording. So thank you so much to Lanette for agreeing to jump in and do this at such the late hour and with somebody else's kit as well. We want to thank you so much from all of us that gather in Prima. We want to say thank you.
I appreciate being here. I love my Prima family, and I'm happy to help any way I can. And I'm glad it worked out. And I'm glad you guys were terribly patient with me as I learned my way through this.
You were amazing. Thank you so much, Lanette.
Thank you. My desk is trash. That's a